You're tuned in to the ColoGreen podcast with your man A-Dub. Welcome to the ColoGreen podcast. I'm A-Dub, and this is the very first edition of this podcast. Now, to tell you what this podcast is basically about, it's basically talking about weed. Basically talking about the weed culture here in Colorado and in the world, actually. But since Colorado, this is the weed capital of the world, or many consider this as the weed capital of the world. I'm mainly going to be talking about, the cannabis industry here in Colorado and what's taking place throughout the world, because a lot of people are interested in what happens in the weed capital that takes place. I mean, yes, when I say weed capital, a lot of people are interested in the weed industry that takes place here in Colorado. So that's what this podcast is basically all about. Now, this is the very first edition. Subscribe to this YouTube link, this YouTube channel, and and hopefully this and it will grow. I'm just speaking in faith, it will grow. So you're not gonna regret tuning into. Now, the first order of business, the first topic. Now, I'm not sure if a lot of you heard of this guy, but a lot of you have heard of the 420 rally. Now, the Denver 420 rally is basically a weed holiday that's on April 20th. And the purpose of the 420 rally is just basically a group of people, basically weed lovers or those who are in support of the movement. They get together to celebrate the weed culture and also to celebrate the political activism that's taking place that's supporting the weed movement. But you have a guy, professor out of Colorado Christian University, and which I believe is a conservative school. But his name is Jeff Hunt, and he's trying to fight to end the 420 rally. Now, I got this message from Westward, and the opening paragraph, and the title, it says, "Why the man trying to end the Denver 420 rally turned against marijuana." So obviously he used to be a guy who once did smoke marijuana, but now he's against it. So according to Westword, it says, the opening paragraph says, Jeff Hunt, the Colorado Christian University educator behind the petition to ban the 420 rally, says teenage pot smoking that harmed his short-term memory and the negative marijuana experience of friends turned against cannabis, which he and others at CCU stands for Colorado Christian University, see as a civic ill that needs to be cured. He says, we want to reform culture, to make culture good, and we see recreational marijuana as a threat to making a good and healthy society. Now, I stop right there. My first major issue is this. Responsible adults should not be punished for the actions of irresponsible people. Now, I agree with him. Little kids and teenagers should not smoke pot. And if I was the lawmaker, I would make the pot smoking the pot smoking age limit to start at 25. I wouldn't make it start at 18. I wouldn't make it start at 21. And here's my reason why. 18-year-olds are teenagers. And when it comes to teenagers, about 75% of teenagers are pretty stupid. And then the other 25% actually have common sense. And then when it comes to 21-year-olds still have the mindset of a teenager. People usually start becoming mature when they turn to the age of 25. Most people, not all people, but most people usually become mature when they turn 25. But my main thing is, you cannot punish those who are responsible, those who don't go outside and walking down the street smoking pot. Those who don't smoke pot and drive, but those who use it as a relaxer, those who smoke it in their personal rooms when they're at home, relaxing from work. You cannot punish it from those people. And then the second issue, the 420 rally is not a place where people are free to break the law. It served as a political movement and a celebration of the culture. Now, the city of Denver needs to do a better job of enforcing the law, because I was at this 420 rally this year in 2017, and there's a lot of people walking around smoking weed, which is against the law. It's against the law in the state of Colorado to smoke in public places, to just walk down the street and smoke weed. And there's police officers out there, but they're barely enforcing the law. So that's one thing that the city of Denver needs to do a better job at the 420 rally, is enforcing the law. Like, yes, you're coming out here to celebrate the culture of marijuana, but you still have to obey the law. And here's my next issue with Mr. Hunt. He uses his irresponsible actions as a child as a reason to ban pot smoking. He used to smoke pot and try to study. Let me read according to West what he said. He said, he started smoking marijuana when he was in the 8th grade. He was either 13 or 14, and he smoked it for years. And his quote, he said, "In my opinion, it's a very bad drug. I got some pretty bad grades during my first few years of high school, and I struggled with marijuana's impact on my short-term memory. I would smoke marijuana pretty regularly and try to do homework, and I forget the paragraph as soon as I read it." Well, duh. Who in the world told you that marijuana is supposed to help you get better grades? Who in the world told you that when you smoke marijuana, you will automatically have energy and your brain will be focused to do homework? Marijuana is not used as a stimulant. Marijuana is used as a relaxer. Marijuana is supposed to relax the brain. But then at the same time, it depends what kind of strand that you use. Now, marijuana expert says the sativas are the ones that give you energy, while the indicas are the ones that relaxes you. So I believe that Mr. Hunt was smoking a lot of the indicas and trying to study at the same time. If that's the case, Mr. Hunt, that's your fault. And it's not the marijuana culture's fault. It's your fault for being an irresponsible child and not knowing what you're doing. You were probably just trying to be cool with your friends, which is not good. Instead of the city of Denver banning the rally, I say the city of Denver just needs to do a better job enforcing the law and bringing clean musical artists to the rally to shine a positive light on the culture. Despite the city not enforcing the law, another thing I didn't like at the rally, there's a lot of hip hop artists there and spewing a lot of negative messages. Now, I don't have anything personally. I don't hate hip hop. There are certain aspects of it I don't like. I don't like the negativity that's attached to it. A lot of times out there at this year's 420 rally, you had a lot of people saying F the president, saying F Donald Trump. Now, I'm not about to sit here and say that Donald Trump's a good man or Donald Trump's a bad man, but I do believe that we must respect the office. And it doesn't look good when you're having a rally and you're trying to prove to the world that this marijuana culture is a positive culture and a clean culture, but you have musical artists saying F the president. So the city of Denver, two things they need to improve on in order for this 420 rally to be as good as it can be, because it has a lot of potential and I really like the vibe that's out there. But the two things they really need to do to improve the culture, to improve the 420 rally. Number one, they got to enforce the law. And number two, you have to find some positive artists that's going to shine some positive light on the culture. Not a group of musical artists that's going to keep on saying F the president. You are tuned in to the ColoGreen podcast with your man A-Dub. The NFL needs to allow medical marijuana and not recreational marijuana. Now, there's a difference between the two now. Medical marijuana is basically for those who are having pains. Medical is those who are having pains in their body and they use it for pain relievement. Recreational marijuana are those who use weed just for fun, just because they feel like using it. They're not dealing with no pains or anything like that. Medical marijuana relieves various pains such as chronic pain. Chronic pain is basically pains that last long in the body, like if you have a long-lasting bone pain or a long-lasting neck pain or, like headaches, migraines, arthritis, joint pain. The cannabinoid oil and it stands for CBD. CBD stands for cannabinoid oil. It contains little CBD, and it's a better source than painkillers. I mean, think about all these NFL players taking all these painkillers, whether it's opioids or I can't even name all the type of painkillers that they're taking, but they're taking all these painkillers and they have to continuously take them because it usually doesn't heal them after the first dose. But this is what the NFL allows them to use. The main issue here is the NFL bans medical marijuana, but it is sponsored by beer and alcohol companies. Medical marijuana antagonists need to stop comparing medical marijuana to recreational marijuana. There's a big difference between the two. Yes, the NFL should not allow recreational marijuana, but medical marijuana is the answers to the NFL's problem against the concussion issue that they got going on. Medical marijuana is the answer. It helped relieve headaches. It helped relieve migraines. And besides those two things, it relieves arthritis and joint pains. But I'm sticking on the head pain because that's the crisis that the NFL is currently going through right now with this CTE crisis. The NFL should be banging on the medical marijuana community's door, asking them, how can you help us? But what I think it is, I think the NFL have a lot of lobbyists from these painkiller groups. Now, I don't really know too much about these painkiller companies or whatever they are, but I think that the NFL has a lot of lobbyists who are from these painkiller groups that are giving them a lot of money under the table, which is causing the NFL to stay loyal to those painkiller groups. And then they use this thing, they use the fact that, marijuana is still illegal. The federal government still consider it as illegal. That's why they're not supporting it. Medical marijuana is the answer to the NFL's head trauma problems, the CTE crisis. And if the NFL finally wants to conquer this CTE crisis that it's dealing against, it's time for the NFL to, move past the conservative views or this old school views trying to compare medical marijuana to tobacco smoking. And the two are not the same at all because medical marijuana actually benefits the body. It helps heal the body. Tobacco damages the body. They need to move on from that mindset and jump on this medical marijuana bandwagon. Period. That is the answer to the NFL's head problems. Now, besides the head problems, joint pain. A lot of NFL players deal with joint pains because guys are constantly banging bodies against each other. And then arthritis. Because a lot of NFL players, when you're playing in outdoor weather in December and November, it's freezing cold out there. And if you're doing that on a constant, you're constantly doing that year after year after year, depending how long the player plays, that player is eventually going to get arthritis. And medical marijuana helps heal that. So the NFL needs to wake up and jump on this medical marijuana bandwagon because it's really going to help the league a lot. But still ban the recreational. Because there is a lot of irresponsible players in the NFL who are going to abuse that privilege right there. The only people who should be taking the medical marijuana are those who are injured. And when or if they ever, allow medical marijuana, they should constantly do weekly drug tests on those who are not injured to make sure that they're not abusing the privilege of this new rule. That's just my take on it. You are tuned into the ColoGreen podcast with your man A-Dub. All right, a politician out of the state of California plans to, he says that he will take the medical marijuana fight with Jeff Sessions to the Supreme Court if he has to. You know, the name of this guy is Representative Dana Rohrabacher. Excuse me if I mispronounced that name, but Dana Rohrabacher. According to Orange County News, it said that he hopes to convince Attorney General Jeff Sessions that good people do indeed sometimes smoke pot. But if he can't, the Republican congressman from Costa Mesa said he will see his longtime friend in court. Now, the issue right here is, he wants to do. The big thing is he wants to debate with Jeff Sessions, who claims that bad people smoke pot. I don't know where in the world Jeff Sessions get that thought from, but Jeff Sessions believed that bad people smoke pot. And the main issue here with Representative Rohrabacher and Jeff Sessions, he plans to debate with a man who has had this belief for years. And the thing is, most old people are reluctant to change their minds. I mean, come on now, think about it. If you have a grandfather, or a grandmother, stuck in their thoughts, stuck in their ways, and no matter how hard you try to convince them to change their mind on a certain subject or a certain issue, they won't let it go. Now, here's more details on this representative from California. He co-authored the Rohrabacher Farr Amendment, which has blocked the Department of Justice since 2014 from spending money on medical marijuana possessions in states where cannabis is illegal. The Rohrabacher Farr Amendment was set to expire, but was included in an omnibus spending bill that was approved Thursday, May 4th, to fund the federal government through September. So this California representative guy has really been working hard, and he's not done. He's not done working hard yet until the federal government finally agrees, finally wake up and realize that medical marijuana should not be considered a bad drug. Now, here's the second issue. You got President Donald Trump, who might ignore Congress and instead interfere with state medical marijuana programs after all, which is not good. Now, look, before I say what I say, I don't have anything personal against President Trump, but because he's the president, he's the president, and he's automatically going to be criticized for the things that he do. Just because somebody criticizes the president, that does not mean they hate the president. They just don't like certain actions and certain laws and certain things that he does. If President Donald Trump interferes with state medical marijuana programs, that's not going to be good. And I won't like him for doing that particular thing. If Trump does this, it's going to make him look more like a dictator instead of a president. And what President Trump has to realize is that just because you're president, you can't do whatever you want to do. There's still checks and balances. You still have states that have the power and the ability to govern themselves. And you shouldn't interfere with states like Colorado, California, Oregon, and Washington, who are regulating their own marijuana laws, period. The next issue, Trump, Sessions, and conservatives want to interfere with how people live in their personal lives. They're not attacking tobacco smokers, nor they're barely attacking opioid users who actually suffer death from the drug that they're taking. Which leads to me believing that opioid and painkiller lobbyists are behind the feds on the ban of marijuana overall. They see the benefits that marijuana have to really put some healing onto people in their bodies. And if marijuana grows as big federally as it's already growing as big in these individual states such as Colorado, Washington, and Oregon, these opioid and painkiller business people will be out of business. So this is why I believe that they have lobbyists that's giving the federal government money behind closed doors to continue to ban marijuana on the federal level, and they want the federal government to go a step further to interfere in the state's regulation of weed. All I'm saying, if President Trump interferes with how states are regulating their weed, it's not going to look good. It's really not going to look good for you, Mr. Trump. Now, I have the utmost respect for you as president, because I do believe in respecting the office. But at the same time, I believe that it's okay to criticize the president. Just because you criticize the president doesn't mean you hate the president. That just means that you don't like certain things that he's doing. That's it. If President Trump chooses to interfere with how states regulate their weed laws, it's going to be a bad look. And it's really going to make him look like a dictator rather than a president. And he needs to slow his roll and follow the laws of this land. There are checks and balances. Just because you may disagree with what a state is doing, that doesn't give you the power to jump up and say, I'm going to do things my way. No way, sir. America is a democracy, not a dictatorship. You are tuned in to the ColoGreen podcast with your man A-Dub. Now, you got two politicians going back and forth with each other. You got Jared Polis, who's a politician here in Colorado, kind of butting heads with a politician from New Jersey, which says Boulder, it says, Jared Polis told New Jersey, a New Jersey politician, that Boulder is not a zombie weed capital. Now, Jared Polis' word to that New Jersey politician comes after the New Jersey politician by the name of Parker Space. He said, people lying in the walkable town center, stone dirty like zombies that you particularly had to walk over. And this is what he said to a media newspaper outlet. He said, what's worse is that some actually had their children with them. He told me not to let this happen in Sussex County. So that was basically a quote from, I forgot the name of the media outlet that I found this from. But basically, the New Jersey politician is saying that Boulder is a zombie weed capital. Boulder is a place full of people who just lay down in the street or stoned all day and not doing nothing with their lives. Obviously, this man has never been to Boulder, Colorado before, because that is not true. Boulder, Colorado is one of the most cleanest, beautiful cities in the entire world. So him making that kind of statement about Boulder, he obviously have never been to Boulder before, and he's using this perception that people outside of Colorado have about people who smoke weed or a weed-friendly state. That is just a whole bunch of people stoned all day, laying around, not doing nothing with their lives, dirty, filthy, and all that stuff, which is not true. But here's Jared Polis' response to that New Jersey politician. And he said, it sounds like your constituent might have visited our iconic Pearl Street Mall during our Halloween mall crawl, which is the only time that zombies are found in our central downtown area. He wrote that the Pearl Street Mall is a popular and safe tourist destination, the center of Boulder's downtown commerce, and offers excellent food, talented buskers, and nightlife. And then he continued and said, and yes, in our town, we do bring our children to Pearl Street. I will also note that you can clearly see in the background that the mall is not disgusting. One final point, not only is marijuana smoking not allowed on our mall, we don't even allow cigarette smoking. We are a clean living town, which is, Polis is absolutely correct. Boulder, Colorado is not only one of the most cleanest cities in the entire world, but Boulder, Colorado is one of the most beautiful cities in the entire world. And for this New Jersey politician to make such statement, he obviously have never been to Boulder, Colorado, period. period. You know, smoke, and I say this again, I said this earlier. Smoking weed outside, smoking weed in public places is not allowed in the state of Colorado. Yes, smoking weed is legal, but there's still laws and regulations that people must follow. And one of those things is not smoking weed in public places. You can smoke weed in your car. I wouldn't suggest that you drive after you smoke weed in your car. Smoking weed and driving is just as bad as drinking alcohol and driving. It's not a good combination. You can smoke weed in your house, but smoking weed in public places is not allowed. It's against the law in the state of Colorado. But anyways, back to this, this back and forth between Jared Polis and a New Jersey politician. Polis summed up by pointing out that legal marijuana has brought 23,000 jobs and generated $200 million in tax revenue to Colorado. And let's not forget about that recently reported from the cannabis that, Colorado's weed revenue is like $131 million this past month, or for the month of March, or something I'll get into later. But the issue here is people east of Colorado or people outside of Colorado are not well educated about the Colorado weed culture. They just think that because Colorado is a weed-friendly state, that it's just a bunch of people outside smoking weed, getting stoned, not doing nothing with their lives, being junky, laying around, just being useless, which is not true. Instead of y'all coming up with assumptions, how about you talk to people who are well educated about the culture and get information from them? You are tuned into the ColoGreen podcast with your man A. Okay, there's a FBI, there's a Seattle cop that got caught smuggling weed from Seattle, Washington to Baltimore, Maryland. And just recently, the FBI charged him. And here's a quote from one of the local media outlets in Seattle. It says, veteran Seattle police officer Alex Chapagdi is accused of helping his brother-in-law and others smuggle at least 100 kilograms of marijuana to the East Coast. In return, Chapagdi was paid $10,000 a month, the charge alleged. So this man making some big time money. The big issue right here is it's very irresponsible for people like Officer Chapagdi. It's irresponsible actions like for people like him that will have Trump and Sessions shut down pot-friendly states, period. Weed smugglers, if anything, Trump and Sessions will use weed smugglers as a reason to why they want to take away weed from the states where it's already legal. Weed smuggling has been going on for years. Let me tell you something. Colorado is the weed capital. It's the weed black market capital in the Mountain West region. People who live in the Mountain West region, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Kansas, New Mexico, Illinois, Missouri, Utah, they come to Colorado to get the weed. This is the black market capital in the Mountain West region. Nebraska and Oklahoma officials stated in a USA Today article that their jail cells are packed with weed smugglers. And most of those weed comes from Colorado. In Interstate I-70, the highway, weed smugglers constantly deliver weed from Denver to Kansas City and St. Louis. Let me tell you something. That I-70 in between Denver and St. Louis, that is a big time weed black market highway. Because there's a lot of people in St. Louis and there's a lot of people in Kansas City who get their weed from Denver, because it's illegal to smoke weed in the state of Kansas. It's illegal to smoke weed in the state of Missouri. So when the guys want their weed, guess where they're going to get it from? They're just going to get on I-70 and take a nice road trip to the state of Colorado. Well, Kansas City's only an eight and a half hour drive when the weather's good. I'm sure people take that ride, that long drive out here. St. Louis, 12 and a half hour drive from St. Louis to Denver. People are willing to make that drive, especially a big money business like wheat. But it's the black market where Trump and Sessions is going to use as an excuse of why they should take away weed from pot-friendly states such as Colorado. You are tuned in to the ColoGreen podcast with your man A-Dub. Now, Colorado earned recently. It was reported by the Cannabis, and the Cannabis is basically an online newspaper. It's an online newspaper business for weed. Basically, it's just centered on cannabis. It's a section from the Denver Post that's just focused on news that's related to weed. So, according to the Cannabis, it says Colorado marijuana sales tops 131 million, set record in March 2007. So in March 2017. So in March 2017, the state of Colorado weed shops basically got made over 131 million in revenue in sales. It's the 10th consecutive month, according to the Cannabis, it's the 10th consecutive month in which sales have topped 100 million. And the sustained double-digit growth rate caught the attention of some analysts and economists contacted by the Cannabis. Now, this story was reported and written by Alicia Wallace of the Cannabis staff. And I'm going to just read the first couple of paragraphs and what she said in this article. Said the Colorado cannabis industry unbridled growth hasn't won. In fact, it's still setting records. The state licensed marijuana shops captured nearly 132 million of recreational and medical cannabis sales in March, according to the cannabis extrapolations of state sales tax data made public Tuesday. The monthly sales haul of 131 million sets a new record for Colorado's relatively young legal marijuana industry, best in the previous high of 127.8 million set last September. The Cannabis calculations show it's the 10th consecutive month that sales have topped 100 million. Now, I think this is very good for the state of Colorado, and it shows that a lot of people love to smoke weed. But the thing I'm wondering is, where is this weed money going to? Now, I understand it's going in the pockets of businessmen, and I don't have a problem with that due to capitalism. If you start a business, and when you start a business, the money's going to come to you first. And I don't believe in people interfering in these businesses and trying to tell people how they should use their money. It's their business. So they can use the money however they want to use it. But I just have a thought. What if like 10% of the 131 million of that revenue went to help provide jobs and more shelters to the homeless people? I mean, the homelessness, there's a lot of homeless people in the city of Denver and the state of Colorado as a whole. And if like 10% of that weed revenue money went to help provide jobs and more shelters to the homeless, I think that homelessness will not exist in the state of Colorado, just based on 10% of that weed money. But anyways, that's just my thought about it. I think it's very amazing that the state of Colorado earned 131 million in weed revenue. It just shows that a lot of people are very supportive of the culture, and the movement is going to continue to grow. So that guy out of Colorado Christian University, that professor by the name of Jeff Hunt, if you really think you're going to take away the 420 rally and try to shut down weed altogether, you got a huge fight coming up for you, buddy. And for the record, I do not believe that smoking weed is a sin. How will God, create a plant, and a plant that is used, that is proven, that helps people, that helps heal people from certain sicknesses and different bad feelings, ailments? How would that be a sin? How would taking such substance be a sin when it is proven that it helps heal you from certain sicknesses? How would that be a sin? That's something that I'm going to talk about on episode number 2. Smoking pot is not a sin. But anyways, that's all for today. Thank you for tuning in to the very, very first edition of this episode. Now, if I sound like a lot of times I was stuttering, or a lot of times I may have sounded I was stumbling over my words, this is my very first time doing this podcast episode, and I promise you that I will get better at this as the days move forward. I'm A-Dub, broadcasting out of Lakewood, Colorado, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and be on alert for episode number 2. I'm signing out, y'all. Peace. Thank you for tuning into the ColoGreen podcast with your man A-Dub.